My son needs to have weekly infusions because his blood does not clot correctly. We recently decided to get my son a port implant. This implant is directly connected to a vein, so that way we can do his infusions weekly, and eventually my husband and I can also learn how to give him his infusions. To be honest, when we found out my son had a blood clotting disorder and then the hematologist brought up getting a port implant, I cut it off and I was like, nope, I am not putting my son under surgery. That's too much. But I'm going to show you what happens when you're trying to find a vein, not only a baby vein, but an individual who has hemophilia. The nurse told us she had 27 years of experience. She first tried his other arm and could not find a vein. Now that I know things and I've read books, usually you will tell the nurse after digging a couple times, this isn't working. So she did go to the other vein and he was fighting so hard, they had to have another nurse come in and hold him down. This was all new to me and I was not able to hold my son down. I was just too emotional at that moment. So they had another nurse come in, hold him down, and this is vein damage. This damage completely affected my son. He slept a lot. He hardly ate, which he loves eating. All he wanted to do was nurse or drink water, which at least he was staying dehydrated. It took about 2 days for him to finally get his appetite back, for him not to be sleeping so much, for him to not be so grumpy. So this is when I kind of realized how important a port implant can be, so that way we can ensure we don't continually have vein damage. So right now my son is still very new to infusions and he's still getting comfortable, so I'm not going to film him. It's still very hard for him, but I did want to share with you what an infusion can look like. So my son has that port implant that's connected to a vein in his chest. So the first thing I'm going to do about 45 minutes before the nurse comes over is I'm going to put some numbing cream on it. And then I believe these are called Tegaderm, but then the pharmacy sends me these as well, and I put this over the numbing cream. And then we wait for the in-home nurse to show up. So when the in-home nurse shows up, I have everything out on the table ready for her. So she's going to mix his factor treatment. It has to be used within 3 hours, and then I have everything else set up. So once she has all that, she comes into our living room where I have a pad down, and that's where we start his infusions. So this is sent to me. This is his needle, and it has, as you see, a tubing, so that way we can administer all of the products. So I always used to joke with my students when I was a teacher, sometimes we have to use our imagination, but we have to pretend that this is a needle and this is the tubing and this is what we're going to use. So at this time, the nurse is going to put on her gloves, and she's also going to have on a mask, and then I also wear a mask, but I'm not going to for this video. We've tried putting a mask on my son, but he just will not wear it. So far we haven't put him in it. He just sits there and fights it coming off, but we keep practicing and hopefully pretty soon he'll be more comfortable wearing the mask. So she is going to clean it with an alcohol prep pad. So she cleans the area, and then she also takes this and she also cleans the area really well. I think she counts to like 10. Okay, and then she also takes these swabs and she cleans around the area again. You have to remain very sterile during this whole process because that vein is connected to his heart, and we have to make sure there's no germs or bacteria that get into the tubing or around the area when we were doing the infusion. So she rubs around there and then she goes to the next step. So the next part would also be to have one of these bigger Tegaderms, and they are so tricky, like they can crumple up together so easily. But she would have a bigger one. This is just a Band-Aid, for example. So she's going to take that needle and she's going to fill around the port, and she's going to find where she has to insert the needle. So they're going to stick the needle there, and then they're going to put the Tegaderm over it so it stays nice and solid so we can start the infusion. So the biggest thing is when they insert that needle into the vein, you'll have some blood draw back in the tubing. I'm always told that's a good sign because that means we're connected to the vein. So the first process, we are going to start with saline. So the acronym we use for this process is SASH. So we're going to take saline. So the nurse has already filtered out the bubbles in this, and she's going to insert the saline. It gets turned in there, and then she just inserts the saline, and then she puts that to the side. Then we jump in and we grab his treatment. This is his factor replacement therapy. So then this is going to also be inserted, and again, you have to do this slowly. Once that is done, if he touches the end of this, which she has to again use some of this alcohol prep pad, and she has to, again, clean it. So we have to make sure this stays really sterile, and a nurse is really good about holding onto it with one hand and making sure it doesn't touch anything. And again, I'm still just observing, and I'm working up my way to learn, but it's still all new to me. Then the next step, again, is the saline. So she inserts the saline. Okay, then once that is all done, the heparin is the last step. So again, now she does the heparin. Okay, all done, great. So then, of course, we put pressure on this, and we go ahead and remove the needle, and we put some nice clean gauze that also comes in our pack. Okay, we put some gauze. You don't have to put a Band-Aid. I was told you don't have to, but I like to. I like to just put a Band-Aid there, and you know, and then he hangs out for a while, and then he takes his nap. So far, we haven't had any side effects. We haven't had any issues from all of this. So yeah, that is how we do our weekly infusions.